I'm Ryan.
And I am Julia.
And together we are functionally literate. Today we are going to be reading the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. We are going to be covering chapters 9 through 11 in this episode.
Yes, we are.
So, how are you feeling about, how have you been? It's been a little bit.
It's been a minute. I'm doing good.
Yeah?
We talked a little bit before we started recording.
Just a little bit.
I'm just loving this book because I know what's going on.
Now you know.
Yeah. I can understand it. I really am enjoying the characters. The world is fascinating. The power structures I'm not sure who's in charge of anything, to be honest.
No.
But I'm excited to find out, and yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah. So, let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
Interlude. Something is missing. Do you know what it is? So, after the first 8 chapters, there is an interlude, which is about a page, where the narrator says, hey, there's something that's missing. So what do you think is missing?
You know what? It's a good question. I don't know.
Like, because it talks about, like, you know, there's something missing in the sky, right?
Yes.
They're talking about, like, the stars and the sun, and it's, like, I don't know. Like,
I don't know what what is missing? I mean, I couldn't even guess.
like, it's something that they don't even know that's missing.
Yes. And maybe something to do with the species of... Maybe that's not the right word for it.
I don't know. But it's just like, you should have noticed it. What is it that you're missing? And it's like, man, maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't know. Like, what's it? Like, are they missing clouds? I feel like they've talked about clouds.
Yeah, I mean, everything's so secluded.
Yeah.
Are we missing a larger, like, more countries? Are we missing, or what?
Well, they've established that it's a supercontinent, like, from the start. And they're talking about something in the sky. There's obelisks.
What do you think those are about?
The sun and the moon and the stars. Wait, does it mention the moon?
No, maybe.
They notice what's there, stars and the sun and the occasional comet or falling star. They do not notice what's missing. But then, how can they? Who misses what they have never, ever even imagined? That would not be human nature. How fortunate, then, that there are more people in this world than just humankind.
Is it God? A higher power?
I've never heard them mention God or a higher power.
Exactly. It's
maybe.
Missing. No, I don't know. Well, I mean, we talked about power structures. Like, well, I said something about it at the beginning of, like, not really knowing who's actually running the show in any of this right now.
Yeah. I don't know.
There's...
Maybe it'll provide us an answer later.
Yep. There's lots of agendas at play.
All right. Chapter 9, then. Syenite among the enemy, during which Alabaster insults the discriminating deputy governor, then later poisoned to be saved by Syenite. So yeah, chapter 9. It's
This woman's a real bitch.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right, though. Her name is Asiel.
Asiel.
Asiel,
okay, that's how you say it.
And, man, she sucks. So, she... I mean, she is what, in our world, I would consider just a straight-up racist.
Yes,
but,
100%.
Because that's the metaphor here, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, the origins are a minority that is being, like, hardcore discriminated against. So it starts with them arriving in the city of Aaliyah, right? Like, they start looking for lodging. They ask around. They find out where some lodging is, but they don't go to the first place that they could reach because there's some young hotshot dickhead who sees them, in their black clothing and recognizes them for who they are, and so like is following them, and so they're like, okay, we're gonna keep going until he gets his hatred, his boredom like outlives his hatred or something.
Yeah.
And so eventually they lose him, and then they stop at an inn. They get they get adequate lodging that is overpriced, is what the book said. And there was a quote that stood out to me, which was that Syenite and Alabaster, they pay the proprietor's price, and the sight of all that nice white money makes their black uniforms acceptable for at least a little while. And I was just like, man, that is so poetic.
I know, it is, and probably a great reflection, not a great, but a
good
metaphor of our
reality.
World. Yeah, exactly.
Let's see, Alabaster gets a new horse because he injured his. He pushed his horse a little too hard.
I know.
The new horse doesn't like him.
He said, "What are you doing here?" And
so what are your thoughts on like Aaliyah in general? Because the book takes some time to describe Aaliyah here.
I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's another, and maybe not in the specific part did it like build this vision for me, but I mean, it's a port town, right?
They've got a big harbor. That's how they get most of their trade.
It's giving Maine. No, I don't know. I got sea vibes and just like kind of beach town, but nothing's nice.
So that's not quite right.
Really?
Yeah, because there's this big steel gate it's made of steel rather than stone.
And they said, "Let me in."
It's very ostentatious and impractical because like Syenite's looking at this and she's like, the first acid rain would corrode this thing. Any kind of like earthquake bigger than a 6.0 would just destroy it. Like, what is the point of this thing? It should be made out of stone. And then like they see the governor's mansion, which is like this big yellow fancy building with completely unnecessary and expensive ornamentation that will totally get trashed at the first major quake.
She said, "Shame for someone to get angry in these parts."
Yeah. But then, so yeah, like the next 4 or 5 pages, they have a conversation with Asael, who is the deputy governor.
Yes.
She's very rude and dismissive.
She said, "Where have you been?"
Yeah, she's straight up, like, the first thing out of her mouth is, like, about time you showed up. We were expecting you a week earlier. So do you want to just get right to business then? Do you want to go down to the harbor, or can you do it here?
Let's go.
And Alabaster's not having any of that.
He said, no, you need to pay our bills.
So
put this on the company card, please.
Well, basically, like he's annoyed that. Hold on, I've got an itch in my ear, real bad. Okay, I got that itch. So he's like, no, hold on a minute. Like, you haven't like treated us with any hospitality.
Yeah.
You haven't even offered us a cup of safe. Like,
where's the governor?
and yeah, it looks straight up like, I'm sorry, I thought the governor was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first read this, I was thinking like, is this like a sexism thing? And it's like, no, he wants to speak to the governor.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to speak to the governor before he does anything. And she's like, no, like, you're going to talk to me. And he's like, you are a pedantic minor bureaucrat. I want to speak to the governor.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is a minor matter. Therefore, a minor bureaucrat is sufficient. And she says it like with acid in her voice.
Well, and it's her whole attitude towards them
doesn't look them in the eye.
No, it's just like, and does it reflect this entire like comms? Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but
well, So there is a moment later that makes me think otherwise, and I'll point it out when we
Okay.
get to it. But so she's like, no, like a minor bureaucrat is fine for this. And he's like, this is not a minor matter. Okay? I can cess your harbor from here. Here in a few years, you're not going to be able to get this harbor will be completely unusable, and your little city will be sunk. This is a major matter, and I would like to speak with the governor before I do anything.
Yeah, they hold the cards because
Yeah.
they need them.
Yeah. And I thought that this conversation was interesting for a few reasons, right? Like, for one thing, we learn a little bit more about why they're coming out here in the first place, like what the issue with the coral is, and it's because the coral has become so obtrusive that the harbor is almost completely unusable. Like, they can't get major freight in now.
Right.
Like, they can only get minor freight in through like the sides of it, basically.
They need him to shake that shit free.
Yeah, and so the conversation just kind of concludes with Alabaster stating that they're gonna go rest at this pricey inn 2 blocks away, and assumes that Asael will pay for it, and Propriety demands that she assents to this. But Syenite suspects that she doesn't have the authority to use government funds to pay for it.
She's like, I can't give you the company card.
Right, but she's like, of course.
Yeah.
And so, like, they're walking away from this, and I'm thinking, like, she's got to pay out of her own pocket. She like, Alabaster's putting her in a position to have to pay for this herself.
Really?
That's how I interpreted it, because she was like, of course we will cover your expenses, naturally. And Syenite's like, you don't have the authority to do that. No. And so yeah, they go to the inn, and they eat there, and like Alabaster's like out of it, and
sleeping.
Syenite's like, what are you, like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, I don't feel it anymore. And it's like, what don't you? And he's talking about his powers, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about how, like, when he goes into the earth, like, he's there for longer and longer periods of time, and when he comes back, something comes back with him. And he says, like, how this is, like, common once you get to, like, your 8th or 9th ring, and like the fulcrum has him, like, on this kind of strict exercise and dietary regimen that he doesn't follow. And Syenite's like, I can tell. And then she puts more food on his plate, and then he eats all of his food. And so then, yeah, they go to sleep, and that's when this weird shit happens. Yep. So you want to get into that?
Well, he's sick. He's down bad, and he's been poisoned.
He's been poisoned.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like, she wakes up and
she realizes something's wrong.
Like, what's happening here? And what, he like kind of throws up on himself or something, or did that?
Well, so he does, but after this whole weird thing with their powers happens first. Right.
Well, and man, I'm gonna just jump all around.
Sure.
Because there's the obelisk floating outside too, right? But she sees that at the very end, I think.
So what happens? I took notes here. So what happens?
Your notes is a million times better than my memory will be.
She's trying to help him, like, he can't talk, and she's like, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" And then she's thinking about what happened last time, how he bolted awake before the quake came at them.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening this time. And so she's like trying to remember what he did, and she realizes he looked west. Like, but something about looking west, and so she looks west, and she's like, I feel like an idiot. And then she's like looking at the sun, and then she's looking at the obelisk, and then like Alabaster reacts to that, and she's like, oh, okay. And so then she starts looking at the obelisk.
Yeah. And
then like she gets sucked in again like she did before, and she's like swirling around and all this, like, she's not present in her body anymore, right? Like, she's sessing in a way that she's never sessed before. And so like she she's like in Alabaster's body, basically, like in his vessels or something. And then she sees it. She sees a contaminant, but that is not her thought, right?
Yeah.
And then she's back in her body, and Alabaster leans over and vomits up this weird milky stuff.
Yep.
And she's like, "Fuck, he's been poisoned." And so, her looking at the sun is, the way I interpreted it, that gave Alabaster the ability to, like, do what he did before and, like, kind of take control of her powers again.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What the fuck are you, like, doing to me?"
Well, and she didn't realize before any of this that was something that could even happen.
No, she understood it. The most powerful Origins powers always take precedent.
Right.
And so she's like, "What are you doing to me?" And he says, like, he gives some BS about, like, "I don't know if I should explain it to you, because I think if you know how to, like, if I tell you, then you'll try to do it and you'll kill yourself doing it."
Yep.
And she's like, "Bullshit. Tell me." And he's like, "Okay, look." He uses this analogy of, like, horses and a cart, right? Like,
yep.
like, if you have one horse, the horse will get tired. If you have, like, one horse in front of another, the horse in front will get tired, and then the horse in back will have to take over. But if you yoke them together side by side, then they together have more strength than alone. And so she's like, "And so what? You're the yoke?" And he's like, "Basically." And she's like, "But that's not possible." And he's like, "Oh, okay, I guess it didn't happen then."
Yeah, he's
And
I love Alabaster.
and he says something, he quotes something, right? He says, the quote is, "They are the gods in chains, the tamers of the wild earth, themselves to be bridled and muzzled." And she's like, "What are you quoting?" And he's like, "Tablet 5. And she's like, "There's only 3 tablets. And he's like, "No, there's more than 3. And she's like, "That's bullshit." And, he's like, "All right, whatever." And then she says to him that if he does that to her again, that she's going to kill him. And he, rather than defending himself, says, "Saved my life. Thank you." And it's like, well, fuck. And, like, that's a really good way to pivot off of accusations. It's like, thanks.
You know what? You did me a solid.
You did me
I appreciate
a solid. There was something else in here as well, because, like, Syenite was thinking about, like, how Origins operate. Like, a toddler could move a mountain, but it takes a lot of control to be able to move a boulder.
Yeah.
Right? So how much, like, God only knows how much control you would need to be able to move poison in your blood out of your body.
Crazy.
Like, that is of, like, very fine-tuned control.
And it's, like, inward on yourself, too.
Yeah.
Which feels like it could be different than the outside world.
Yeah. That's a point.
What do you think is going on with these obelisks? Obelisk?
So, at the end of this chapter, I wrote down a realization that I had.
Okay.
Like, so this is my hypothesis.
Okay.
Right? I think the obelisks are stone eaters.
Like, before becoming a stone eater?
No, I think
Like,
I think that because there was this passage before talking about stone eaters about how, like, you would never even know, right? And you remember how how we were talking about that, and I was like, "Oh yeah,
Wait,
stone eater could look like a tree from far away." But now I'm thinking, like, no, they're the obelisks. They can take the form. They're all around,
they can turn into
floating around in the sky, and nobody thinks about them. Nobody knows what they are. But if they knew, they'd be fucking terrified.
That is a really good hypothesis. Because I was just like, it's surveillance. They're being watched by I don't know who. So wait, that's kind of true. But when I said surveillance, I was like, oh, these are like the government, or the people at B that hold all the power.
Like the leadership in Humanist or whatever.
Yeah. But I like that it's the Stone Eaters because they are watching, but, like, you don't really necessarily know what their motivations are.
Yeah. And so this chapter ends with Syenite, like, thinking that somebody poisoned him
Yeah.
on purpose. And then it ends with her just, like, looking out at an obelisk just floating along in the sky. And, like, when I was listening, because I was listening to the audiobook, when I was just listening to that description of her looking at the obelisk, I was like, the obelisks are stone eaters. This is, like really poetic
Wow.
foreshadowing. That's what's happening here.
I love that. Yeah.
And so it had an ending passage too. It's this is from Tablet 3, Structures, verse 1. Set a flexible central beam at the heart of all structures. Trust wood, trust stone, but metal rusts.
Wow.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't either. I like get to these like little passages at the end and I'm like, I read it. I didn't comprehend any of it, but I read it.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 10. You walk beside the beast. The wildlife have changed. Hoa is dangerous. Our party becomes 3. So we are Asun again.
Yes, it's us.
We are
you, or we
are
us.
you. You are us.
Uh-huh.
We are Asun. Asun is awakened by the sound of fighting, and so we leave with Hoa. We just get the hell out of there. And we talk to Hoa. Hoa doesn't really know what happened, and of course, we woke up, so we don't know either. And so, like, we're surprised at the time that we woke up. It's like maybe 3 a.m. or something. Like, it's a couple hours before dawn, and we're like, why didn't you wake us? And Hoa's like, well, you were sleeping so peacefully. I didn't want to wake you. I wasn't tired. And, like, we're annoyed because it's like, damn it, kid, like, now you're gonna be tired later.
Yeah, Hoa, you never sleep. Why? I wonder why that would be.
That's so weird. And so, like, we are, like, considering options. Like, we're thinking about going back to the campsite. Hoa suggests that we go back to the place that we went to, like, a day before. Like,
we gotta fill our water
a day,
jugs.
like, returning to the stream. Yeah. And it's a good suggestion because then that would keep us safe, but it's like a day's backtracking, right? Like, it's the safer option, but it's not like, because we would be backtracking, we're so opposed to it. And so we go to where we were camping. We were camping at a roadhouse with, like, a bunch of other people that were camping at that roadhouse because, like, everybody's displaced right now, right? Everybody's trying to get back home and everybody's traveling. And so the people at this roadhouse, we go back there and they were, they were slaughtered. Yeah. Unfortunately. But there's some interesting stuff here for, like, flavor, like Hoa, on our travels, we got new clothes for him. So now, like, we kind of look alike, which is good. So people are like, okay, he's with her. We swipe a bedroll that was, like, at one of the abandoned camps. And
get some good supplies.
Yeah. And also, like, we're walking quietly, and Hoa, through observation, figures out how to also walk quietly. Like, something with how you roll your foot on the step.
Yeah.
And then he's, like, really proud of himself once he can walk quietly. He's like, oh.
Hoa's adorable.
Hoa is adorable. He's also terrifying.
Yeah, I still want to hold him like a little baby.
So we go into the roadhouse, and there's this very dirty woman at the pump who we suspect has been comless or homeless since before the start of the 5th season. Which has only been going on for a few weeks. And, like, this woman is just, like, caked with dirt in such a way that suggests she has not been in a comm for a while. Like, she's not just someone that's been displaced. And so we have, like, a brief dialogue with this woman. This woman is like, I don't want anything to do with you. We're like, we don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah, we both say white flags, peace. We're not going to hurt each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then, like, we start using the pump. And she's, like, got this makeshift contraption attached to one of her water skins because
she's figured it out.
she's running a test and she's testing the water quality and like it's doing this weird clicky thing and then she's like it's safe and she tells us that this part of the contraption like it's a leaf and she says this leaf is from the same plant that's used to make safe and she treated it with something extra to pick up some things that safe doesn't notice and we're like there are no contaminants that safe doesn't notice and she's like bullshit. It's safe doesn't work well when it's cold. You need to have it in like a tepid or warm solution, and it also doesn't catch things that'll kill you slowly. So like if somebody puts like something in there that won't kill you for several months, safe's not going to pick that up.
Right. Right.
And so then like because she tells us that, we're like, oh shit, you're a geomist. And she scoffs. She's like, those sort aren't trustworthy.
Yeah. But you're like, okay, sure.
All right, sure.
Sure, friend. You say what...
Yeah.
Say what you will.
So then, like, we finish filling
like
our canteen. And then the woman offers us another canteen in a small pack. And then she says that an animal attacked, not people. And it's like, we're like, how do you know that? Like, did you see? And she's like, no, it's just that people aren't so fast to like, start slaughtering people. Like, like things haven't gotten that bad yet. Animals did this.
Yeah.
And so she goes to leave. Not us. She does. And then she stops short. And we go to see what's going on. And there's this creature called a Kurkusa.
That's how you say it. Okay.
Yeah.
Kurkusa.
And so it, like, the way they describe it, it's like, man, this thing sounds adorable.
It's a pet.
It's a pet.
Yeah.
It's it's a long-bodied, furry creature that kind of looks like an otter on land, like a land otter. They're cheap. They're trainable. They eat leaves from plants. But the problem is, during a 5th season, when ash gets on the leaves, like once they taste enough ash in their food, they go feral and they develop a taste for meat and they like start eating people.
Not so nice anymore.
And that's why they're cheap because dogs don't do that.
You know what? You're right. And I hate when this happens to my pets. They just start
going feral.
I'm like, not again. I would risk it all. I would still get one.
You would get a Kurkusa?
Yeah.
Just be like, there won't be a 5th season in my lifetime. It's fine.
It'll never turn on me.
It'll never turn on me. This Kurkusa loves me.
But who comes to save the day?
Hoa. Hoa comes to save the day.
Our king.
So like we're observing, right? Like we realize because we can hear it. We hear Kurkusa in the distance eating, and it's like, oh shit, they're eating the people from the campsites.
Not a good sign for us.
No, and so then Hoa just walks right on up to the first one that we can see, and the creature's cowed by his confidence, and Hoa's just, doing, child things like, hey, offering his hand out like, oh, hi. And then the thing tries to eat him. Like it
grabs a hold of his arm, doesn't he?
So what it does is it swallows his hand like up to his elbow or something and like bites into him, and then it turns into a sculpture. Like it just stiffens until it's like a statue, but it's still like latched onto him because his hand is in its throat.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? And Hoa's like regretful, and he's like, I didn't want you to see this yet. And
he's so
and we don't know what to do with that information. We're like, okay, we're gonna get you free. And Hoa's like as an afterthought realizes what's happened, and he's like, ugh. And so he kind of just like flexes his arm, and the thing's head shatters.
Yeah,
it just shatters, and like you can see like bits of red and stuff, but like the blood doesn't flow like liquid; it's all frozen.
It's crazy.
It is. And then, like,
it's a little Medusa-y.
yeah, and, like, his arm is bleeding a little. but he won't let us treat it.
Just a little scratch.
Yeah, like, and so like he's like behaving like you're gonna treat me like a monster now, and like we're like, well, we're a monster too, and so we offer our hand out, and he takes it, and we walk away, and then the woman follows us,
and it's so
she's just quietly accepted that she's part of our group now.
It's the Three Musketeers.
Yeah,
and I love it.
Yeah.
This is squad goals for me. I want to be with them.
So what do you make of all that?
I mean, I think we're getting a little bit more insight into Hoa.
I still think he's a stone eater.
I mean, yeah.
I think everything is a stone eater. The Obelisk are stone eaters. He's a stone eater. It's all stone eaters. It's stone eaters all the way down.
And I think it's interesting because like this is like if Hoa is a stone eater, this is like our first like real. I mean, we've heard about stone eaters. So you get these like kind of poetic prose like
about them.
Yeah,
we saw one in the prologue.
Right, but you don't have any like interaction with a stone eater or like. Like, what are they up to?
That's a good question. I don't fucking know.
I don't know. I loved, getting a third person to join this journey. And she seems great. She seems funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's.
Yeah, how are you feeling?
Do you know what I feel? I feel like it was interesting that Kirkusa were introduced because, like, outside of stone eaters, there haven't been really any fantastical creatures.
No, you know what? You're right.
Like
none.
Like N.K. Jemisin she just like drops a little fantasy in her stories.
Yeah.
She doesn't go nuts with it, or at least in this one.
Well, and it's like still like very grounded and like, it's a pet, like it mirrors our reality. In some ways, it's not like so fantastical,
right? Yeah.
So
the only fantastical bit is that it goes feral at the taste of ash. Like Jesus.
But who doesn't every once in a while?
I mean, I haven't tasted ash personally.
Okay.
I bet it would taste awful though.
Yeah. So can you blame them?
And then, so there was another closing passage. This was from Tablet 1 on Survival, verse 3. Beware ground on a loose rock. Beware hail strangers. Beware sudden silence. It's like, man, I don't know what that means either. Like, like part of me wonders, like, maybe the name of this podcast is fitting. Like, maybe we're not intelligent enough for this. Maybe we're not brainy. Maybe, like...
It's humbling.
Yeah, like, I wonder if, like, someone else that's smarter than us would read that and be like, oh, I totally know what this means. Let me explain it to you.
Some things, it's okay to not understand them all.
Excuse me.
Some of this we can be like, that was beautifully written.
Beware hail strangers. Like, what does that mean? Like, healthy?
Let's use context clues. Beware ground on loose rock. Dude, I don't know.
Fair enough. All right. We're going to get to chapter 11. Chapter 11. Damaya at the fulcrum of it all. So, I liked this chapter.
Loved it.
It was interesting. There's two parts to it, really. So it starts with, like, a day in the life of a fulcrum. And then the second half is, like, these kids are fucking bullying Damaya.
Yeah,
like,
they are.
They're just being straight up little bullies.
I mean, it's interesting to get any glimpse of life in the fulcrum, I think. And how cruel kind of everybody is, but it still, like, has this, like, shiny cover of it all. In some ways, like, there's some beautiful aspects of the fulcrum of, like, the garden, this, but it's, like, do not step out of place.
Yeah. Like, we will punish you if you don't do what we tell you.
Yeah.
So, like, the way their day starts, it starts at dawn, which Damaya is used to that. So she just, like, she wakes up before, like, anybody even comes to the room most days.
Right.
But, like, none of the other kids are used to that. They're used to like city living basically and sleeping in. And so like, you know, two of their instructors will come in and like, you know, start banging on the walls and shit and make them wake up. And so then they've got to, they have to make their beds and then they've got to shower and they got to make sure everything is clean.
And the shower's a luxury.
The shower for her, yeah,
Yeah.
showers of luxury for her, and she has to like hide that it's a luxury for her because she doesn't want everybody to think that she's like a country bumpkin and stupid and like, oh my god, like you think that this is great, haha, silly girl.
Right.
So she doesn't like, even though she loves the shower, she doesn't like make a big deal out of it. And so then, you know, you've got to brush your teeth. And then go back to your dorm and get dressed and groom. And then it talks about like how like different kids with different types of hair have to groom themselves.
Yeah.
And like they've got to be all prim and proper. And anybody that fucks any of this stuff up, like if you're not clean enough, they'll make you go shower again. If like you don't put your shoes on, they'll fucking rub your feet raw. If like you don't brush your teeth clean enough, they like wash your mouth out with soap.
Yeah.
Like crap like
My
that.
My parents would do that to me as a punishment.
What? They'd wash your mouth out with soap?
You never had your mouth washed out with soap?
Oh, no. My dad was, like, a gentle soul. He did not punish me for shit. Like, he would talk to me. He would talk things out with me.
We would have to sit on the step, or they'd be like, I'm going to wash your mouth out with soap. Yeah, I've had my mouth washed out with soap.
That sounds awful.
It sucks. I'll say that.
Soap is for skin.
Exactly.
Exactly. But yeah, so then like so that's like how inspection goes. Like once they're dressed and groomed, then they're inspected and, you know, you can get your mouth washed out with soap apparently.
Yeah.
And so
and she's like very precise and good at this routine.
She is.
I think.
And I think it's because of what happened to her on the trail, like on the trip,
getting her hand broken.
Yeah, like
she's got some trauma.
That was that definitely, and like she doesn't complain about any of it because she knows what the instructors will say, and what they'll say is, when you're dirty, all origins are dirty. When you're lazy, we're all lazy. We hurt you, so you'll do the rest of us no harm. It's like, man, that is such bullshit.
I know, it sucks. It's so stupid.
But oh yeah, I made note of this because I thought it was interesting. There's a trans boy here.
Yep.
He stuffs his pants with a sock, so it looks like he has a penis.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's
representation.
Representation, but also poor you, man.
I know,
like,
it is sad.
Damn. And so yeah, so after inspection, there's breakfast, and then there's lessons in the crucibles, which is like a court that isn't the ringed courtyard. They're not actually called crucibles. That's what the grits call them. The adults know, but they pretend that they don't know.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a little weird. And so, like, the first half of the day is oral lessons, right? Like, hours-long lectures about, like, math and the tablets. Yeah. They have this interesting interaction where they talk about one of the verses in that was brought up in the prologue, right? Like the thing about find the origin in the center of the circle.
Yes.
Right? And then they talk about how like that's not actually accurate because the strata of an origin's power is not actually circular. But, because it requires a whole bunch of math and stuff that doesn't make a ton of sense to your average layperson, accuracy gives way to poeticism.
Right. No, it's definitely interesting. And we have Damaya just like...
She's smart.
She's so good.
She answered that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are jealous. You can tell right away.
Yeah.
We're getting bad vibes from some of her classmates.
Yeah. And so then after lessons, lunch, which is bigger than breakfast. They have breakfast after inspection, and then they have lessons, and then they have lunch, which is bigger. And then they are sent in lines after lunch through... No, wait, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. There's something else I made note of. Damaya, she sits alone at lunch.
Yeah.
And there's other kids that sit alone at lunch. And the commonality that I noticed between all the kids that sit alone, they're the ones that have been injured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
They know
what's up.
They know how serious
Mm-hmm.
one step out of line is.
So they just sit alone.
Yeah, they're like, I'm not here to make friends. I don't.
So then after lunch, the grits, they're sent in lines. Oh yeah, did we get into that? Did we explain grits?
No, I don't think so.
So a grit is anyone at the fulcrum that hasn't got their first ring yet.
I don't know. Did we even talk about rings?
Yeah, we've talked about rings.
Okay.
We've talked about rings extensively. Like, basically, the more rings you have, the more control you have, and the more privileges you get. So
yes, we would have.
So, like, as a grit, like, you don't have, like, any control. You don't have any respect. You're a student.
You haven't gotten to take your test. You're still just a goo goo gaga baby.
And you're just a little... Yes, exactly. You're just a little goo goo gaga baby that can kill us all. So
literally. Nothing to fear.
So, right. So, after lunch, they go through the ring garden in lines to their afternoon lessons, which is applied orogeny. And so here, like, when she's going through the ring garden, like, we learn that Damaya, she's, like, jealous of those that have rings. She's jealous of what they have. And she uses that jealousy to fuel her determination, basically.
Yeah.
She throws herself into her applied lessons, right?
Yeah.
Like, she wants to get this control that's so important to have so she can get her first ring and she can quit being treated like a shit.
Yeah. Can't blame her.
Right. So then after applied orogeny, dinner. And then a free hour before bed. Because they are still children.
Yes.
And they recognize that. It's like, you've got to have some free time.
You get an hour and then bedtime.
Right. And that's their day. That's their day-to-day life. It's like, man, that's rough.
It's all they know.
They have a bunch of extensive lessons of lectures in the morning. They've got all this applied orogeny in the afternoon into the evening. And it's not even, like, they don't even get to do anything fun. Like, they're, like, it's all about, like, gaining control, right?
Yep.
Like, the moment their instructors can sense that they're going to do something, their instructors, which are also origins, they do this thing where, like, a little bit of wind slaps their face.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we know what you're going to do. Stop it.
Calm down.
Calm down. Calm down.
Calm down. It's interesting for sure. And the fact that I mean, of course their teachers would be origins and not guardians.
Yeah.
But
and so then we get into the second half of the chapter, which is like 6 months of this, right, has been happening, and then around 6 months, one day at lunch, there's this annoying boy called Arquette. But officially his name is like Maxi or something like that.
And he sucks.
He sucks. And like he sits down and like is trying to schmooze and she's not having it. And then he's read too many romance novels and he's like, this is how you're supposed to react. And she's like, what the fuck are you on about?
Like, he's like, I'm the popular boy. You're the small town girl or whatever. I don't know.
And then I betray you. And then you, like, at the end are a little more beautiful and a little wiser. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Like
you read too many stories. And so then we get this thing about, like, lorists, right? So, like, he's talking about, like, she's confused, and he's like, didn't you have any lorists in your town? And she's like, yeah, we had lorists, but they taught us about, like, the tablets and stuff. And he's like, you had real lorists. I'm talking about the pop lorists, the one that tell fun stories that don't mean anything.
She's like, no, I definitely didn't get that pleasure.
So they talk, they do small talk for a little bit, but he's the one that's mainly talking. She's just eating, and then he leaves.
Right.
And she doesn't think anything of it. But then, the next day, someone bumps into her in the shower. And then, as she's getting dressed afterwards, she sees that her shoes are missing.
Big.
She gets punished. They take, like, I think they take, like, sandpaper to her feet or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's so fucked. And so yeah, and then at lunch, she's drinking her juice, and someone spiked her drink. She's gets drunk.
It's terrible, honestly.
It's awful.
And that's a big,
that could have gotten her killed.
Literally.
Straight up.
Literally.
Like, literally could have gotten her killed.
Because it's dangerous.
Imagine being drunk, right? Could you imagine having all of that power while drunk?
You're like, what if I just shook this place to shambles?
Like when I'm drunk, I'm numb and I'm stumbling around. Yeah. I remember many a time accidentally hitting people a little too hard because I couldn't feel anything in my arms because of how like tingly I was. Like, I cannot imagine how dangerous it would be for one of these kids to be drunk.
No, it's and your emotions you're more inclined to maybe get a little emotional. Mm-hmm. So say the wrong thing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of her instructors realizes what's happened, but doesn't punish her, takes pity on her.
Yeah.
Takes her to his dorm.
Do you think he knew that she had her drink spiked?
Must have, because like the way I was reading it, like she was totally oblivious. Like she didn't know that she was drunk. She didn't know what was happening to her. She was like just she thought she was sick or something.
Yeah.
And so, but he realized what was happening and probably smelled her breath.
Yeah.
Or something. Takes her to his dorm and has her sleep it off on his couch, and then tells her, "You need to sort this shit out right now."
Yeah.
I think he understood that she was getting bullied.
Right. And like the shoes go missing, you're drunk.
So he's just like, you need to get to the bottom of this.
Well, and probably she has at least some good like standing with some of these teachers because she's
the best.
Yeah, she's the best out of the entire class.
She's throwing herself into her studies. She wants this.
Not in line with her character.
Yeah.
He's like, these people are fucking with you, figure it out.
Yeah, and so she's like, okay, I don't know who's bullying me, but I'm going to figure it out. And so she's like, I need an ally. And so she seeks out an ally in this girl who... Crack, yeah. So her name is Selu, but all of the kids have nicknamed her Crack.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't care. She just accepts it. Like, she responds to it because that's what everybody calls her. It's like, all right, I'm Crack.
She's supposed to be like another loner, kind of.
And the nickname's really mean too, because like, I guess with she's described as being a knife, and like the training that she's been receiving has only made her knife sharper. Like her orogeny is a knife, and the training is just making that knife sharper. And so the kids all call her Crack because she's gonna crack at any moment, is the idea. And so so she seeks an ally in this girl Crack, and Crack is like, how bad are things that you're coming to me? And Damaya is like, I mean, you're getting bullied too, right? And she's like, yeah, I am. And it's like, okay, well then let's help each other. Let's team up. Let's help each other.
They
and Crack's like, okay.
Big bully down.
Right. And so then it's really interesting how they do this, right? Like, she pretends that her shoes have been stolen again. And one of the instructors now starts taking it more seriously, because once suggests carelessness, twice is like, whoa, really? For real?
Something's happening.
And so then she points the finger at one of the kids, and the kid is like, what? No? What do you mean? You lost your shoes. And it's like, really though? And so, so there's like all of this finger pointing.
Yeah.
And...
well, and the kid probably doesn't. He's like, all right, I didn't steal her shoes this time. Like, maybe I did it last time.
Right. And so there's like 3 pages of this, like just arguing back and forth, and the instructor's trying to get to the bottom of it. Yeah. And then finally, one of the kids points the finger at Crack.
Yep.
And Crack, instead of denying it, like starts chewing his ass out in front of everybody, saying like this heinous shit about like how this kid like got molested and liked it.
Oh my god.
Right? Because like, because this kid pointed the finger at her, like she helped me sell the shoes, and she's just like, basically the way I interpreted it, saying like guy that they sold the shoes to is the one that molested him,
Mm-hmm.
and like was going on about how he would be a good breeder, but even breeders have standards, and it's like, fuck,
Yeah,
dude.
Crack like digs in and
Like, and Damaya is left thinking like, this is wrong. Like, kids get in trouble, but not like this.
Yep.
Right? And so...
Did you ever feel bad for... Well, sorry. Say what you're saying.
No,
and
go
I'll ask
ahead.
my- Well, I was going to say, did you ever feel bad for Crack? But I feel like...
Any sympathy I had for her went away when she explained why she did it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, because like once like everything's all out in the open, the instructor points at the other two kids involved and her and is like, all right, come with me. And the other two kids go, but she stays a second and she straight up tells Damaya why she did it. She's like, she knew, like, I mean, like, they call me Crack, right? Like, you know, you're goody two shoes. Like, I knew if you started getting in trouble, maybe that would confuse them and like keep them off of me, or at least that was the idea. Like,
Yeah.
and so no, like, fuck her.
I
like,
know. I know.
And so the instructors, they like start searching her bed, and under the bed they find alcohol. And so, like, those kids are just never heard from again. Like,
Except
one
for
of
one.
well, one of them stays, but I think like they broke his hand or something.
Yeah, comes back with a broken hand.
And then the other kid is exiled to the Arctic.
And then the other, they don't know where they went, I thought.
And then Crack was taken and never heard from or mentioned again.
And so we can probably assume that Crack ends up at, what are they called? Where they like hook them up and they
made
just,
into
like,
a node maintainer?
Yeah.
Probably.
That's what I assumed. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, so I only asked that question sort of about Crack because, I mean, like, up to a certain point, I agree. Like, I felt bad.
Do I think that she should be made into a node maintainer? Absolutely not.
Well, right. But also, I'm like, this environment that these kids are in, literally, like, it is, like, turns them into monsters, I think, too.
Yeah.
And their childhood, like, up to it, to, like, arrive at this point, they probably had to do some serious shit.
Yeah.
Or some serious shit happened to them.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, we don't know anything about Crack's life before.
No, we don't. But they, like, I just was like, oh my God, these kids just, none of them probably have had a break. And now they're in this shit-ass school with a bunch of jerks.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, not all of them are going around and stealing shoes and...
Well, because, like, despite all of this, I'm reminded of, there was a little passage about the ring garden in this chapter, right? And all of the people with rings are having a great time. You know, they're flirting with each other, being real social. And it's like, it's this weird thing. Like, they are taught that they could be, like, badly hurt if they don't get control over their powers, and then they see what happens when they get their rings. Like, every day they're walked through the ring gardens to their afternoon classes.
Yeah.
And they get to see what is in store for them if they can get their first ring.
You can have a flirty, fun time.
Yeah.
Lay around in a garden all day. Do a job here or there.
I'm gonna get my first ring.
Yeah.
I'm just reminded of what you were like. I'm just gonna get my first ring and live the high life.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna stay in this garden. Do not disturb.
Right. Yeah, and so then the ending passage, it's really long, so I'm not gonna quote it. It's about the fungus season. And so it just kind of talks about how, like, it just kind of made increased humidity in the region that it went off in, like, the volcano went off in, and it was only for like 6 months. But because of the increased humidity, it made like there was this fucked up fungus. And that's why it was the fungus season, because the fungus like wiped out all of their crops. And so it took 2 years for them to like deal with the fungus, and it took another 2 years for them to like, you know, get their agriculture where it needed to be.
Yeah.
But all the comms had enough stores to last, and so the Imperial Empire, or whatever you want to call it, used this as justification. Like, no, this was good. The way we handle things are right. And so, like, they built on those laws.
They said we're flawless.
Well, yeah, it's like, no, like, listen, like, we need more reforms. We need better seasonal planning, all that. Yeah. And that's it. So where are you left? What do you think about these 3 chapters that we've just read?
Well, I mean, we're getting more information. You know, we've got the world is established, so now we're just like getting into the, at least, you know, with Damaya, daily life.
Yeah.
Syenite. She has some rings, so she's out.
She's got 4 rings.
She's doing her stuff.
She's out doing stuff. She's fucking this dude that she doesn't want to fuck.
She's like, this sucks, but...
You know, gotta do what I gotta do.
And us, you know, we're just trying to stay alive.
We're just trying to stay alive and find our daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, I've enjoyed it. I feel like we're really starting to... Before, when it's too early, I don't always know, like, the right questions to ask. But at this point in the book, I had a lot of questions.
Sure, like
about
what?
a lot of different things.
Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, we've kind of already talked about them. Like, Hoa, what the hell are
What's
you?
up with Hoa?
What's up with the obelisks?
What's up with the obelisks is a very good question.
And at this point, too, I was like, okay, because I remember your theory of Damaya
being Syenite, being Asun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this, I was like, I could see that.
You could see it.
I felt good.
You've not seen anything to suggest that's definitely not.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure. Cool. Okay. Well, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you to Vidwest Studios for letting us use your space and your equipment. Thank you to Mr. Chris D. Mooney for being our audio recordist. We appreciate you so much for doing this for us. Thank you to Jake Weller for our intro and our outro and our blurb music. If you like what you've heard musically wise in this episode, be sure to check out his album Wasting Time. It's on Spotify. I think it's in other places too, but you know, I use Spotify. Thank you, Julia, for being here.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me.